two, a three. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I ever get back. Oh, it's root for the Cubbies. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Hey!
This is the Monday Morning Quarterback on the 9th of September, 2019. This is a Boston Red and Jerry Pippin Memorial broadcast booth, the Monday Morning Quarterback. We're actually doing a little bit of quarterbacking today. We have an episode roundtable from Face the Nation at CBS News. It's about 20 minutes. We'll play it at the last of our episode. Basically, we'll get to polling first here, the latest polling, and after we've done the polling, then we'll move on to some other things. We have an interesting football story. We don't do the NFL scores, but this is a quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals. He won the Heisman Trophy, Mr. Murray, and he was also the quarterback of the Oklahoma football team. The oddity of this particular gentleman was, in high school he was only 5'5", and being 5'5", that is a bit short to be a quarterback in the NFL. Normally NFL quarterbacks at a minimal 6 feet, and normally over 6 feet, 6'5", 6'6", etc., and to be able to see over the line. And now he reminds me of the quarterback for Boston College, and he went on to be an NFL quarterback also, Doug Flutie. Now Doug Flutie, I think, listed himself as 5'8" or 5'9". He was more like about 5'7.5". But he was able to roll out. They had plays for him, and able to throw over the big lineman. Evidently, that's what happened today out in Arizona. They had a rocky start, but he came back and tied it up. So we'll have that story from the Washington Post. But first, let's get to some very interesting development here in the from Real Clear Politics, and we have some polling here from both CBS and I believe also NBC. Let me just get to it here. This is ABC Washington Post poll of the National Democratic race. They have Joe Lunchbox Biden up by 10. He's 29. And Liz Warren, Senator Warren, is 18. Bernie Sanders, 19. Harris is 17. Buttigieg is 4. Booker 1. Beto is at 3. Amy Klobuchar is at 2, and Gabbard, I suppose I mispronounced her name, has 2, and Tom Steyer 1, and we won't even talk about de Blasio here. There's no reason to. And we move to Iowa. Now, this is CBS YouGov. Evidently, they have teamed up together. Biden is up by 3 points. He's at 29. Liz, this is in Iowa. Bernie Sanders has 26. Liz Warren is at 17. Harris at 16. Buttigieg at 7. Amy Klobuchar at 2. Senator Booker of New Jersey at 2. Beto O'Rourke at 2. Gabbard is at 2 also. In New Hampshire, this is another CBS YouGov poll. Warren is up by 1 point. A statistical situation there. She's 20. They all bunched together. She's at 27. Lunchbox Biden is at 26, and Bernie Sanders at 25. Buttigieg has 8 in New Hampshire. Harris had 7. The ones are Yang, Klobuchar, etc., and Beto O'Rourke. To the state of Nevada. Biden is at 27. Bernie Sanders leading in the state of Nevada. We expected that's a union organized state. Bernie has always done well in Nevada. Now at 18 is Senator Warren of the Commonwealth. Harris at 6. Buttigieg at 4. You can see Harris and Buttigieg there. Percentages are dropping. Beto O'Rourke is at 3. Yang is at 1. Julian Castro is at 2. And Gabbard is at 1. She's out of Hawaii. South Carolina. Now that's a different situation. That is a Democratic Party in South Carolina made up of followers of O.J. Simpson. And they are African Americans, but a bit more conservative than elsewhere. Biden has a 43. That's very unusual. And then comes Bernie at 18, Senator Warren at 14, Harris at 7, Buttigieg at 4, Senator Booker at 2, Klobuchar at 1. The others there. Now this is the Boston the Boston Globe Suffolk poll has Biden up by 2. In the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Warren has 24 here. Statistical heap, basically speaking. Bernie Sanders has 8 here. Buttigieg 5. Harris, Beto O'Rourke at 1. Amy Klobuchar at 1. The Mass Senate race, Kennedy at 35. Senator Markley at 26. And so forth and so on. Now these are all. I'd see how I've seen this poll before. Maybe it came out early. And this is a Sunday poll. And we have, let's see. And now in Texas, we're given this. Biden is up by 6, and then comes Beto O'Rourke at 18. And you have Liz Warren and Sanders 15 and 13 respectively. Amy Klobuchar has 3. That is in the state of Texas there. And let's see, early in the week we had some other polls. Another YouGov poll here had Biden up by 4. This is a national race. He had 26. Liz Warren had 22. Bernie Sanders at 14 in that poll. And you can kind of see how things are changing in these YouGov polls. The national poll, let's see, what was Biden in the earlier poll here? On Wednesday, he was, just up by 4. And in this one, he's up by 10. No, this is ABC Washington Post. No, we don't have another YouGov CBS poll. Now, let me just deep dive a little bit into this. We were going to deep dive into this, and maybe we're not going to be able to do it. Oh, got the essence of it anyway, so we'll just move right along here. And then we'll come back. We'll go to the ABC. Now, this is the ABC Washington Post poll here. We'll go over it. This is Warren gains, Harris slips, and the room for movement is vast. This is by Gary Longer on the 8th of September from ABC News. A gain for Elizabeth Warren, a slip in support for Kamala Harris. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Warren are top the field. That's in the latest poll in advance of the debate in Houston, Texas, sponsored by ABC and Univision. Finds Biden, the summer's front runner, far better rated for electability than being the best for the president. Still is supported and more committed than those of the other candidates. Biden has supported 27% of the Democrats and leaning independents in the national survey, compared with 19% for Bernie and 17% for Liz Warren. Then you have the rest of the field there, Harris, Buttigieg, etc., etc. And this is Langer research did the Gary Langer research evidently. Let's see, where they play. Produced for ABC by Langer Research. Narrowing to registered voters, although there's plenty of time to register. Showed similar results with Bernie Sanders and Warren at 29, 19, and 18. Harris again at 7. Two candidates, Tulsi Gabbard and Amy Klobuchar, inch to 2%. The only meaningful shifts plus 6 points for Warren from her 11% support in July, while Harris has lost about 4 points. Warren gained particularly in the Northeast. In the Northeast, where the Senate is from, he has 27% of support. In urban areas, 22%. Amongst liberals, 27%, while Harris lost 10 points. Amongst seniors, that's a Biden stronghold there. The race has vast rooms to move. Minority of Democrats and Democratic leaners, 43%, say they are committed to their current candidate as long as he or she stays in the race. Biden benefits from a higher level of commitment. Amongst backers, 64% say they definitely will support him, while 35% say they'd consider supporting another candidate. The numbers are reversed for the rest of the field. Almost all the candidates support combined. Just 34% are definitely their choice. A lot of fluctuation there. Electability, and Biden holds an advantage there. 42% see him as a candidate with the best chance of defeating DJ Trump. That puts him far ahead of Bernie at 14, Warren at 12, up 5 points. Harris is down according to ABC here. Suitability rather than electability is Biden's weakest card. Liz Warren commented on this. Far fewer, 23%, said he would be the best president per country. Barely more than half as many who see him as the most electable. Nearly as many pick Warren as the candidate who could best be the president. 19 and 16% for Bernie Sanders. That said, electability has grown in importance. In an ABC poll last spring, 38% of lean Democrats said it was more important to them. But that does change. In part, few are now undecided on this question, up 20 points amongst women and college graduates alike, as well as 17 points amongst European and those with higher incomes. Most important, if a nominee defeat Trump, 31% for Biden, 11% Bernie, and 25% for Liz Warren. Closest to me on issues, 17% there. Bernie Sanders is actually the closest to these people on issues, 31% there. Another result regarding attributes benefits Biden with 38% seeking a more moderate likely to defeat DJ Trump, 13% a liberal, and that gets a little bit confusing there. Amongst other attributes, Democrats see a man as likelier than a woman to defeat DJ Trump, 23-7. First time I'd seen that item out there. Strange person as more apt than a straight person. Sorry about that. And more apt than a gay person when 29% versus 1%. I suppose that is sent to the mayor, the esteemed Mayor South Bend. Who knows? Biden knows much of his advantage to African Americans with 44% of the support, almost double his level amongst Europeans and Latinos. Results among Latinos and African Americans for the last two combined were a robust size. Holds a clear lead amongst moderates as Lunchbox Biden with 33%, while he runs even with Sanders and Warren amongst so-called liberals. The persistent age gap continues. Biden's support peaks by age at 41% amongst seniors with 5% for Sanders, while Sanders in turn has 41% of the 18 to 29-year-old. That is a good demographic favorability. Let's see. It's notably that for three of the top running candidates as well regarding their party, 82% of lean Democrats express overall favorable option of Bernie, 79% towards Biden. It's the first time I've seen this particular number, and 75% feel favorable about Warren. That is up some there for those scores around to find what unites lean Democrats, 89% said DJ Trump. And the methodology here, very interesting. They used Espanol in English, random sample of 1,003 results, a margin of error. Large margin of error here, 5.5%. 437 Democrats, Democratic leaning, and partisan divide, and full samples are 28, 24, and 37% there. And this is Langer Research Associates of New York, with sampling collected by App Associates of Rockville, Maryland. So in other words, it was a number of people that worked on this particular poll for ABC News. It was not just, we'll say, one particular person. It was a myriad of people. Okay, I know what happened here. Just basically my Google Drive. They went to the Google Drive. My Google Drive is not here. Okay, we understand that. And see if we can snatch up the next part of the report here, possibly. And the betting odds. We have the betting odds. Perhaps we'll have to come back to them, and it appears what we'll have to do. Okay, so we'll go in a different direction here. Now, that's the story we were working on, the MIT Media Lab. The chief, of course, resigned, and this is from the Boston Globe, after new revelations about ties to the late Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein, there, and very unfortunate situation. An MIT Media Lab resigned following fresh allegations that he deliberately masked the full extent of his ties to Epstein, leaving the university and its acclaimed research center in a turmoil. And the scientists worked there are stunned and anxious about a place has been dubbed the Future Factory. The Ito, I don't know if Mr. Ito is intended to Judge Ito of Los Angeles or not. He led the lab for 8 years and credited with invigorating the center with more money, ideas, diversity, ambitious, creative science. And he was stepped down immediately. No doubt he was asked to hit the door. After giving the matter a great deal of thought over the past several days and weeks, I think it is best that I resign as director of the Media Lab and as a professor and employee at the Institute effectively immediately. That's what Ito wrote. Ito also resigned from 2 other prominent posts. The Times announced that he resigned from its governing board, where he had sat there since 2012. He resigned as a business professor from Harvard, where he taught on ethics and technology. We didn't give that one up. Ito had been dogged by criticism over the money he had accepted from Epstein in his own personal ventures, along with visits he made to Epstein's home. The New Yorker, we'll get to that expose here. The Institute of Massachusetts Technology, Raphael Riffet said, I'm really messing up his name. It's REIF. Said that the university will hire an outside legal counsel to look into accusations by the reporter Farrell here. Anyway, with deeply disturbing allegations. These were emails and a whistleblower was involved. The MIT had designated Epstein as disqualified to donate, but emails and other documents show Ito and Peter Cohen, the lab's former director of development, and this is where it all starts, solicited, when reporting donations solicited from other philanthropics on the lab's behalf. So they got this as anonymous, but yet it came from him. Ito said that the lab, $500,000, $525,000 from Epstein. Media reports said he took 1.2 from a venture capitalist fund. These new ideas raise serious questions about that. What was really the extent of the donation? Says Mr. Pasink, the dean of Indiana University's Lilly Family Family School of Philanthropy. Getting to Epstein, we all know about him, is a home to more than 30 of faculty and senior researchers, 275 students and staff. Has a budget of $80 million. It's funded primarily by corporate grants from IBM, ExxonMobil, Google, which has broad access to the lab's research. Sad within itself. Ito, an internet entrepreneur who was an early investor in Twitter, Flickr, and Kickstarter, has boosted its fundraising and deep loyalty with the lab. Now researchers the word sponsors who joined because of Ito will leave. Yeah, boy, this is nasty. More than 2 dozen MIT students and others declined to comment. One third-year student did have something to say. Majoring in computer science, who declined to give his last name, said learning of the contributions made him consider for the first time the background of MIT donors. Two former lab directors said despite recent controversy, the lab will remain viable, hopefully so. By Saturday morning, many backers abandoned him, including several who had previously signed a petition in support of Ito. So in other words, they threw Mr. Ito onto the proverbial bus and drove off without him. New York Times also had an article on this. Director of MIT Media Lab resigns after taking money from Epstein. Is their headline here, shows Ito here. And almost immediately the MIT Juchio Ito left the board. We talked about that. And Free Up Organization. Now, they were not named. The MacArthur Foundation, John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, New York Times company where he had been on the board since 2012. And a business professor at Harvard had to give it all up. Sent an email to the MIT provost, Martin Smith. Ito's resignation came less than a day after the article in the New Yorker. Epstein made and apparently solicited from the rich and powerful over the years, including a $2 million gift from Microsoft's Bill Gates. So a lot of names involved in this. Ito wrote that the gift from Gates had been directed by Epstein, a development office at the Media Lab. Peter Cohen wrote in a subsequent email, for gift recording purposes, we will not mention Epstein's name as the impetus for the gift. That was 6 years after he pled guilty. A spokesman for Mr. Gates said Epstein had been introduced to Gates as a person of interest in helping increase philanthropy. Although Epstein persuaded Gates aggressively in any account of a business partnership or personal relation between the two, it's simply not true. Gates, one of the richest men. I mean, this thing could just be high-profile scientist, business executive, Leslie Waxner, the chief executive of L Brands, Leon Black, the founder of Apollo Global. I mean, it just goes on and on. Some of these people that were associated with old Epstein. The MacArthur Foundation said reports about his actions, if true, were not keeping with his values. No doubt about that. A.G. Sulzenberger, that published at the Times, and the company's president, Mark Thomas, wrote an email to staff that Ito had stepped down effectively immediately. Signe Swinson, who served as development associate and alumni relations coordinator at the MIT lab from 24 to 16, shared internal emails concerning Epstein with the Times. She still supervises several times her discuss at Epstein's involvement. That was never listened to, Swinson said, who worked under Cohen. Swinson shared the correspondence after consulting with the organization's whistleblower aide. She learned of Epstein's connection with the lab when she interviewed for a position there in 2014, told Cohen that the MIT listed Epstein as disqualified as a donor. She said Cohen replied that Mr. Ito had a relationship with the wealthy financier one of the 2014 emails that Swinson shared. Ito wrote about $100,000 donation from Epstein, asking for developmental staff to make sure this gets accounted for as anonymous. So Ito, following a rapid ascent in the tech world, made himself as an unorthodox choice to lead an academic program, not the freewheeling media lab. He was a two-time college dropout who ran a nightclub, then ran a string of internet companies, and invested early in Twitter, Kickstarter, and Flickr. He was a master networker, no doubt, who visited the Obama White House to discuss artificial intelligence, became a friend with the respected lawyer Lawrence Lessing after criticizing Mr. Lessing's book when he gave a talk in Japan. Lessing later put Ito on the board of the Creative Commons. Oh no, we use the Creative Commons license here. Ito's ability to connect with both students and wealthy donors had helped him raise at least $50 million. Media Lab. It had also contributed to the development of technology related to touchscreen GPS. Ito faced significant criticism from inside the lab. Two scholars said he would leave at the end of the academic year, with one saying he urged Ito to not to associate with Epstein. We looked literally for years to make STEM feel safe and attractive for women in face of crushing sexism and gender bias. That is from Kim Holloman, an artist who was visiting scholar and research affiliate at the lab. That was 2013-2017. At a meeting Wednesday night with lab personnel, Mr. Ito said he had screwed up by accepting money, but he had done so after a review by the university and consultation with advisors here. Anyway, we already talked about the outside counsel emails provided by Ms. Swinson. Outlined the informal role that Epstein played at the lab in correspondence about donations from Gates. Cohen wrote that Mr. Ito did not talk with Gates and that the program did not solicit his money. In another email, Cohen and Mr. Ito discussed Epstein helping to connect the lab to Mr. Black, global management there. Ito wrote that Black wanted to make a large donation in honor of a friend who wished to remain anonymous, and later asked Ito to find out from Epstein whether Black himself wanted to remain anonymous, when indicated that Mr. Black had given to the lab a gift of $4 million by wire transfer. So when Mr. Black did not comment, Mr. Black has sought to distance himself from Epstein. Everybody on the face of the earth is now to distance himself from that character. Cohen is now Director of Development for Computer and Data Science Initiative. At Brown University. Did not respond how long he will remain there. Flipper Cohen. He described for the first time the amount of money he received from Epstein, and he said he twice traveled to Epstein's island home in the Caribbean to seek donations. By the near end, one of Ito's staunch supporters, Nicholas Napoli, a founder of Nicholas Grapotti, founder there, said he told Mr. Ito to take the money and he would do it again. That probably Ito sent an email. Mr. Nerapoti. A few hours later, Ito tendered his first of several resignations there. Ito put a disclaimer at the top that has been set up before the news of the emails. By Saturday night, so that petition was a scheme, but it just didn't work out very well for them. And the article here in the New Yorker is what ultimately did these characters in. And this is one example of many times citizen journalism or journalism with whistleblowers itself can have a profound effect on what goes on. And evidently here it did indeed have that profound effect. So Mr. Ito is now disgraced, and I guess it's a matter of time. From the New Yorker here, how an elite university's research center concealed its relationship with Epstein is in here. New documents show that the MIT Media Lab was aware of status of Epstein. Update on Saturday, less than a day after the publication of this story. Ito, director of the lab, resigned from his position. We'd already talked about that. The MIT Media Lab, which has been embroiled in a scandal of accepting donations from Epstein and attempts to conceal them. No doubt there'll be further situations there. Epstein was credited with securing $7.5 million in donations for the lab, including $2 million from Bill Gates, $5.5 million from Mr. Black here. The financial entanglement revealed in documents going well beyond what had been described in a public statement by MIT. And L. Raif wrote, with hindsight, we recognize with shame and distress that we allowed MIT to contribute to the elevation of his reputation, which in turn turned to distance from his horrible acts. Well, that's the problem. Will the president of MIT be asked to resign? Documents and sources suggest there were more to the story, where of Epstein's various schemes. Epstein was identified only by his initials. Epstein's direct contribution to help the lab. Ito wrote to Epstein soliciting cash infusion to fund certain research, asking, could you up or top out with another $100,000? He replied, yes. And we already talked about Bill Gates. I for one, don't like to throw names of people out until we get a little more documentation. And from Bill Gates, any claim that Epstein directed any programmatic or personal grant making for Bill Gates is completely false. A source close to Gates said that the entrepreneur had a long-standing relationship with the lab, and that the anonymous donation for him or his foundation are not atypical. Gates previously denied receiving financial advisory services from Epstein. Epstein wisely kept his quiet to himself. CNBC reported that he met with Epstein in 2013 to discuss ways to increase philosophical spending. And again, we have Ito and Cohen did not respond. I imagine not. Several former and current faculty and staff at the Media Lab described a pattern of concealing Epstein's involvement with the Institute. We already talked about Swanson here. But this happens in the realm of fundraising. Many things are done with universities, alumni, friends of the university, people that want things done. Now here we go again. Amongst the lab's although secured the 5.5 from Gates and Black, Epstein and Ito fundraising plan failed to reach still larger scale than initially hoped. He solicited, including those from Gates and Black, would be matched by the John Templeton Foundation, which funded projects of the intersect of faith. Let's see, a conversation about keeping altar books because calendar is visible to everyone, Swanson said. VIP visit. Ethan Zuckerman voiced a concern. I imagine a lot of people had concern about the dirty business, but they needed the money. Medium post here on the Medium also. Also reported Epstein's widespread misconduct by Judy K. Brown in the Miami Herald. She'd been writing about it a long time, even though she resigned over the last relationship. This is Swinson. Her participation in what she took to be the cover-up of his contributions weighed heavy on her since. Her feeling of guilt were when she learned about a recent statement from Epstein and Company. And this is from Mr. Farrell, the contributing editor here to the New Yorker and the author of the upcoming book, Catch and Kill Lies, Spies, and Conspiracy to Protect Predators. He won a Pulitzer in 2018. So this is his story. So let me look at the time period here. Okay, we're about where we want to be because we have the CBS piece coming up. Basically, it is on their polls and what is in New Hampshire. And let me just do the sports, and then I'll move back to it. The quarterback. Let me just... Kayla Murray went from a 5'5" high school quarterback to star in the NFL. He did indeed. This is in the Post. Inspired our little story here. He was at Texas A&M. It was where he was thought he would go to school at least. He was 5'5", 130 pounds, and would become. So now he is 22 years old. He's 207 pounds and 5'10". They're playing in Tempe, Arizona. The Arizona Cardinals, and they have him in position here. Let me just quickly go over to explain to what happened here. Murray, this is from SI Sports Illustrated. That rallies the Cardinals with 18-point fourth quarter situation. The Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray made his debut. The Cardinals were down 17-6 heading into the fourth quarter. Detroit opened up scoring to take a 24-6 lead before Murray helped lead an 18-point comeback. That means somebody's defense is a little bit shaky here. Following a block punt, Murray led us a 60-yard scoring drive that was capped off by a touchdown. Remember Larry Fitzgerald? Before overtime, Murray was 24 for 42 with 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Overtime, Murray covered 60 yards at 2 passes before the Cardinals settled for a field goal to make it 27-24. The Lions tied it up 27-27. The Cardinals selected the former Oklahoma star, number 1 pick, last season Heisman Trophy. And he had to decide whether he was going to the to Major League Baseball. He's picked in both sports. He was number 9 pick of the Oakland A's in their 2018 draft. He announced his commitment to football in when was it? February of this year. All right, let's move along here. We'll do college football here. We'll start out. This is from ESPN. Marshall and number 24, Boise State 14-7. That was on a Friday, and on Saturday, Clemson 24-10 over Texas A&M. Bama rolled up on New Mexico State 62-10. Georgia 63-7 over Murray State. Oklahoma just ran another basketball score here. 70-14. Somebody named Hunt led them. Ohio State shut out Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati, 42-zip. Texas was a victim to LSU. LSU 45-38 at Texas. And in the second overtime, Michigan finally got it together there. Number 7, 24-21 over Army. Auburn 24-6 over Tulane, and Florida number 11 over UT Martin. Utah 35-7 over Northern Illinois. Golden Bears, I suppose, got on the University of Washington. They were ranked 14th. Excuse me. Their score was 19-20. Penn State 45-13 over Buffalo. The Oregon Ducks destroyed Nevada 77-6. I don't know why they do something like this. Wisconsin shut out poor Central Michigan 61 to nothing. Oh. UCF 48-14 over Florida Atlantic. Michigan State another victim over Western Michigan 51-17. Iowa shut out our former music director Ellie Bill Graham's Rutgers zip to 30. And Maryland, the Tampons there 63-20 over Syracuse. Washington 17 over Northern California. And in overtime, Colorado beat Nebraska. Nebraska was 25. 34-31. Sorry, Nebraska. Happens to the best of it. Let's get the baseball scores here. That final score: Yankees 8-5 in Fenway over the Red Sox. The Rangers 10-4 in Camden Yard. Philly 10-7 over the Mets in New York. The Toronto 8-3 over the Blue Jays. Cincy at 1 point over the Reds 4-3. The Marlins in Florida shut out Kansas City 9-zip. The Nationals beat the Red Hot Atlanta 9-4. The Cardinals shut out the Pirates in Pittsburgh. Jack Flaherty is off again there, and Pirates 2-zip. On the south side of Chicago, the White Sox defeated the Angels 5-1. The poor Cubbies were defeated in Milwaukee 8-5. Tyler Austin drove a pinch hit 3-run homer. Oh boy. During the Brewers' 5-run fourth inning. Poor old Cubbies. Anyway, the Astros 21-1 over the Mariners in Houston. In the Twin Cities, the Cleveland defeated them a 5-2 line score. That was Cleveland 11 hits, no errors, and the Twins 5 hits, no errors. The Athletics of Oakland 3-1 over the Tigers, and in 10, the Padres defeat the Rockies in San Diego. And finally, the Dodgers shut out the Giants 5-zip. And 2 is a magic number for the LA West champion, for the Dodgers to win the LA West, I should say. That will be the earliest one, and some of the others, particularly the National League Central's up for grabs. Cleveland is trying to do what Cleveland can do. And we'll just have to see on that one how it all ends up. If we left anything out here, to the CBS part there, basic Talking Heads from the Hill was on New Hampshire. Well, yes, New Hampshire is part of New England. We haven't forgot that. Bernie Sanders, of course, is from Vermont. He's doing well there. We expect Bernie to do well in New Hampshire. And also our own Senator Warren from the Commonwealth will do well in New Hampshire. So where does that leave the other candidates? What would Joe Biden would do? Well, it would depend, obviously, on who wins the New Hampshire primary after the Iowa caucuses. For Joe Biden, he can ill afford to be shut out in Iowa, but he could eke out something that Hillary Clinton did in Iowa, and of course actually Bernie Sanders won the Iowa caucus, and then of course he won New Hampshire. But the situation, it could be a long, drawn-out situation, a little different this year, because after New Hampshire they go to South Carolina. The party there is made up by followers of O.J. Simpson, Democratic Party. The African Americans there are a bit more conservative than nationally, but nonetheless he would have a victory there, and he'll have victories in Mississippi, etc. But on Super Tuesday we have to go to California and all of those states, and how will Joe Biden do? How will Joe Biden do in California? Very big question there. How will Joe Biden do in Texas against Beto O'Rourke? It's not how it used to be. It used to be, I believe Bill Clinton did his upset in New Hampshire, and there was an upset that sparked the race, and the race moved on. Doesn't happen anymore because first of all, the Iowa primary is going to have to change. They came with a virtual primary, and the DMC ruled that down in Nevada, but things are changing and demographics are changing. So you're not assured of the party organization because, incidentally, Joe Biden has the inside track with Democratic party holders. No doubt about that. Same way with Clinton, but does that help him with DJ Trump? Well, on the other end of the spectrum there, Mr. Walsh is after DJ. Former governor there, Bill Ware, he's after DJ Trump. And here comes Terry Stanford. What will they be able to do with DJ Trump? Well, there's 3 or 4 states had already decided they're not going to have primaries or caucuses. So that's weighted towards Trump. But a lot of dirt can be kicked up by a flamethrower. There's no doubt about that. So DJ Trump will be faced with some flamethrowers. How much primary they have, who knows on that one. And also on another angle, DJ Trump, who picked this up from Politico, has created his own app. This will be something that his followers will be able to be on the smartphone, and they'll be able to get up-to-date information at the same time for their loyalty at the rallies and whatever. They'll get autographed pictures, probably Trump hats, and VIP treatment if they win the grand prize. Interesting to see who enters those contests. Anyway, that's some of the things that old Brad Perscale has inclined there. He's the campaign manager. So a lot of tricks. President Obama had that, and Hillary and Master Clinton got an application together, an app I should say, and it was late in the game for the monster, so the monster did not benefit as much as possible. Let me just get the betting odds here. There are some betting odds out here, and the funeral, incidentally, of the leader of Zimbabwe, President Mugabe, will be on a Saturday in Zimbabwe. So we'll be covering that. We started to put together a presentation already on the life of President Mugabe, and we'll see where we go with that one. And let me see if I can get these betting odds up here. We were going to do, here's the betting odds. Basically, they're going with real clear average here of 35 for Warren, 25.9 for Biden, and 15.1, Booker 2.6, Bernie 1.6, and the various casinos, 7th here. Our friends in Belfast, I believe it's Biden at 34. Let me just make sure I'm matching these names up here. Excuse me, that is Warren at 34. And then comes Biden at 23, Bernie at 14, Harris at 11. And that's pretty constant for the various bet victory. What do they have? Warren at 35, Sanders at 27, and Bernie at 14, Harris at 14 also. And 88838 Sports, basically about the same thing. Warren is ahead in all the betting, and Biden has 27. He comes in second, Bernie third, and then Harris. And it'll be interesting to see how these match up as we move along. Here, 32 red. They have actually Warren at 36 and Biden at 27. And then Bernie Sanders and Harris. Harris's highest rating is 14 at Bet Victor. Who the hell Bet Victor is. Bruno Judge is at the 6 at all of them there. I don't know why they have Clinton in this. She's got a 3. I'm assuming that is her. Sandra Booker is at 2. He's at 4 at Bet Victor. Chelsea Gabbard is, she does at Bet Victor. She's at 4 also. And some of the others, I don't see them on here, but no doubt they are somewhere. We're not sure where they are. But anyway, the CBS Face the Nation, we'll go to it. This is Boston Red on the 9th of September 2019. And incidentally, we're on all of the channels. And as we normally do, we remember Jerry Pippin from the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth. Have a good week, everyone. Boston Red, peace out.
News Battleground Tracker. That's our survey of the Democratic candidates and how they're doing in the early contest. There are 18 states in our aggregate, starting with the Iowa caucus up through Super Tuesday. And there is a big reshuffling in the top tier. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren is now at 26% support, just ahead of former Vice President Joe Biden at 25%. The third candidate in our top tier is Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. He has 19% support. In the second tier, those are the candidates with higher single digits. California Senator Kamala Harris now has 8% support. South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg has 6%. Former Texas Congressman Beto O'Rourke has 4%, and former San Antonio Mayor Julian Castro and New Jersey Senator Cory Booker are at 2%. The rest of the field comes in with 1% of the vote or less. Joining us now is CBS News Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, always good to have you here. Tell me about this reshuffling.
Well, this is a story of Elizabeth Warren rising, not necessarily Joe Biden falling. He is about where he has been. But her support and that boost she's getting is as a result of other candidates, now former supporters, moving to Elizabeth Warren. And we've seen this because in this survey, we've gone back and re-interviewed thousands of voters since the summer. And what we see is, in particular, from Kamala Harris, her supporters are now moving to Elizabeth Warren, and at twice the rate that they've moved to Joe Biden and to other candidates. So she's clearly picking up some of them. She's consolidating a little bit of the liberal side of the Democratic Party, and also her electability ratings are on the rise. She's 16 points higher in being perceived by Democrats as being electable, as being able to beat President Trump, and that's always been a key criteria. And lastly, Margaret, I want to emphasize, this is in those early 18 states that you mentioned where the campaigns are really focusing. They're the first ones to hold contests. And so that movement really reflects, I think, where the campaigns are putting their energy.
So Warren's gain is Harris's loss, but what does this mean for Joe Biden?
Well, there's still some good news here. He's still up in our delegate count. And here's what that means. And I know it sounds like it's a far-off thing. There's the Democratic convention next summer. But ultimately, this campaign is a fight for delegates. And delegates are handed out to top finishers in all of these states, really any candidate that gets above 15%. Well, by the time you get through all of those states, Joe Biden is doing well enough. He's racking up a lot of delegates, a lot of votes in places like South Carolina, that he still has the overall delegate lead in that estimate when we take these vote preferences and we translate them into how the delegates would be awarded in the states.
So that's important still to actually clinching the nomination.
Yeah, by the time when you get to next summer and you're at the convention, the balloons drop. That's how the delegates are actually awarded to candidates.
So let's take a look at some of those key states.
Yeah.
And we have them here. We'll bring them up on the screen. Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada. What are they telling you?
Iowa is tight. It's still with Biden ahead, just narrowly over Bernie Sanders. But then some news out of New Hampshire, where we know that Elizabeth Warren has been really ramping up, staffing up, campaigning a lot. She is now very narrowly ahead of Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. That's effectively a three-way race there. South Carolina, I mentioned, Joe Biden still has a substantial lead there. African-American support, really critical. And then in Nevada, often overlooked, but an important early primary, we've got Bernie Sanders narrowly up on Joe Biden.
So with this information, what do people do with it? What do they predict going forward?
I think what you watch is who has room to move and room to grow, by which I mean, are candidates being considered by voters, even if those voters aren't making them their first choice yet. And what we see is that Elizabeth Warren does seem to have even more room to grow because she's being considered now by more than half of Democratic voters, even the ones who aren't making her their first choice. When they describe the candidates, she's seen as electable or increasingly electable, but that's still Joe Biden's strong suit. He's still seen as the most.
Means
being able to beat President Trump in the minds of Democrats, and that's really been a top criteria for them. They want somebody they think can go on next November 2020 and beat President Trump.
Thanks so much, Anthony Salvanto. And as always, all of the results are available on our website at facethenation.com. We'll be right back with our political panel. It's time now for our political panel. Jamal Simmons is a Democratic strategist and host on Hill TV. David Frum is a staff writer at The Atlantic. Michael Crowley is a White House correspondent covering foreign policy for The New York Times. And Laura Barron-Lopez is a national political reporter at Politico. Good to have you on Face the Nation.
Thank you.
We just revealed that battleground tracker that moves Elizabeth Warren into the top spot. Is that also what you've been hearing out there on the campaign trail?
Yes, we've seen, as I've been on the campaign trail, as a number of my colleagues have been, we've seen this slow and steady rise from Warren. She has very systematically put a lot of boots on the ground in places like Iowa and New Hampshire and Nevada. She's been very methodical about getting data on voters, and she has been trying to really utilize her niche, which is I have plans for almost everything, and she's really heavily leaned into that, and it appears to be working because she is slowly gaining on Biden.
But it also suggests, according to our polling, that there is more attraction to this idea of the progressive wing of the party. Jamal?
Yeah, I think my math for this election has been pretty consistent. The Democrats need a progressive that they can sell to the center, not a centrist that they have to sell to the progressive wing. I mean, that's sort of what the John Kerry election was in 2004. That's sort of what the Hillary Clinton election was in 2016. Those didn't work out very well. I would just say this. If you look at the history of the New Hampshire primary, then 5 times a Massachusetts official has run in the New Hampshire primary, Democrat and Republican, since 1988. Each one of those people either won the New Hampshire primary, or they came in second, like Romney, but all of them got over 30%. Mitt Romney got the lowest at about 31, 32% when he ran in 2008. So the probability is that Elizabeth Warren will win the New Hampshire primary. What does that do to Joe Biden, whose entire election is predicated on him being the winner when he may not be winning?
David, you saw in just the past few hours another entrant into the Republican race. Mark Sanford, the former congressman from South Carolina, wants to challenge President Trump. Trump campaign says, it's irrelevant. Is it?
Well, they have certainly made it so that Mark Sanford will not be able to vote for himself in his own state's primary because they have shut down the state primary. Donald Trump is so popular in the Republican Party that he does not want Republicans to vote on his renomination. That's how popular he is. The story of the Republican Party...
It's not unprecedented that the caucuses have been canceled in some of these states.
It is not unprecedented, but it's something where when a president wants to demonstrate the strength of his support in the party, that these kinds of acclamations can be useful. The key to Donald Trump's position in the Republican Party is a problem of fractions, which is that he is getting a bigger and bigger share of a smaller and smaller party.
Bigger and bigger share of a smaller and smaller party, but yet not willing to count him out.
Well, that he's going to be the nominee, I think that we count him in.
No, but potential re-election.
His potential re-election, I think, suddenly looks worse this fall than it did this summer. The story that things are beginning to go wrong. The price of his policies is arriving. The bread and butter issues, you can just see everywhere around us, the signs not of economic trouble, actually, but of economic warning. And we're seeing consumer confidence leaking. We are seeing the financial markets reacting badly. And we're seeing that the things that the president might try to do to save the economy are temperamentally unavailable to him. That to find some way of reaching some kind of agreement with the Chinese on taking off the table the stupid things that we're arguing about, like washing machines, and focusing on the important things, intellectual property and the security of the 5G network. He can't do that, and the consequences of his inability are affecting real people's wages, which are now flat, and soon will be affecting real people's jobs.
And Michael Crowley, President Trump has sold himself as a deal maker. We just saw another potential deal literally fall apart in the past 24 hours with Afghanistan.
Yeah, well, first of all, what an amazing turn of events. I think that much of Washington was prepared for a big announcement that they had reached a conclusion. Now everything is kind of in pieces on the floor. And it's an example, I think, of how, the president practices this kind of wild, seat-of-the-pants diplomacy. It reminds me a lot in broad strokes of his approach to North Korea, the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. I'm going to go meet with this guy who had basically never met another foreign leader before. Everyone was astonished. You can't do that. Yes, I can. This Camp David thing would have been the same thing. This is crazy. What are you talking about? The Taliban is going to come to America. They're going to come to Camp David a few days before 9/11. And this is how the president operates. And I think he loves to kind of gobsmack us, and also thinks that by kind of breaking through these walls, things become possible. But, Margaret, we're not seeing the results. I mean, his diplomacy with North Korea has essentially gone nowhere. Kim Jong-un is still producing nuclear material at a pretty steady pace, launching short-range missiles. He has stopped some tests. And Afghanistan now, this peace process is in tatters, and who knows what happens next. So this president's improvisational, wild style, I think, earlier in his administration, some people thought, wow, he might actually be able to get some things done that other presidents couldn't with their conventional ways. I think there's a lot more skepticism about that right now.
And yet this is a popular thing to run on for Democrats. The idea of ending the war, bringing the boys home, is something every single candidate says they're going to do. Very few have actually detailed how they're going to do it. Does this force Democrats to answer those questions now, or do we just move on to the next crisis?
I think a bit of both. I think you might see some Democrats trying to answer that, to strike another contrast with Trump. But again, a lot of what's going on in the primary race right now is very insulated. They aren't always reacting to Trump or what he is doing in the immediate sense. They're staying focused on the plans and the visions that they want to bring to the voters.
And this may be an opportunity for all normal politicians to reintroduce the American people to basic concepts of operationality. There are reasons why these kinds of discussions are handled at the special envoy or assistant secretary level and not brought to Camp David until there's a success to announce, that you do not commit the president's time, and maybe Democratic candidates could begin. Because I think one of the great challenges for the country in 2021, if there's a Democratic president, is all this progressive energy you describe is going to find itself running into a whole series of objective walls, a probable Republican majority in the Senate, terrible fiscal problems, even if there isn't a recession, much worse fiscal problems if there is, the intractability of the health care problem. This moment, which is not central to people's voting concerns, is a good moment to say these problems are hard, they're difficult, we are not making promises, we certainly are going to do our best, but we're going to do our best through channels, and we're going to have a special envoy in Afghanistan, not the president doing seat-of-the-pants diplomacy, as Michael calls it.
Jamal, I want to ask you as well about, gaffes, I guess, is the word we can use on the campaign trail. Kamala Harris, who we showed in our poll, was losing some ground to the benefit of Elizabeth Warren, had to apologize for something she said at a rally this week. Or let's listen to what she said.
There needs to be accountability. I mean, what are you going to do in the next 1 year to diminish the mentally retarded action of this guy?
Well said. Well said.
I played that so people could judge for themselves. What was she laughing at?
It was a bad moment. And I think her campaign would have come off better if she had said after this, when they asked her, you know what, I reacted poorly to that. I wish I hadn't, instead of saying she hadn't heard it. But that's what happens in campaigns. Campaigns have bad moments. Elizabeth Warren is still trying to get past the Pocahontas and the DNA and all that other stuff. Campaigns have bad moments. The next question is, what are you offering the people, right? Donald Trump is going to say all the things that it is he's going to say about the Democratic nominee. The question is, what are you offering people that they want to be out there and be for, and they're going to go and rally behind you because of that, despite whatever mistakes it is that you've made. And I think people are still waiting to hear from Kamala Harris a concise message about what those things are. About what those things are.
Crowley, Sharpiegate.
Thank you for asking. Right.
What do we make of it?
Well, look, we've all we know the details by now of the president taking his Sharpie to his hurricane map, and on some level, it's a total theater of the absurd. On another, I think it's encapsulates American politics right now. The president essentially tried to distort He got the facts wrong, then tried to retroactively distort them. Looks like he enlisted government officials to back him up, wouldn't back down, showed, number one, a complete obsession with media coverage, and number two, an incredibly thin skin. But I think that, there's 40 and change percent of the country that thinks this was the media, this is the White House's line, this is the media going after Trump relentlessly, making too much out of something that wasn't that big of a deal. And this is like this rinse, wash, and repeat cycle we have in the country, where now about half the country thinks the president basically isn't playing with a full deck, and some large number thinks that he can't get a fair shake. And it's going to come right down to November, and I think be a close call as to which one of these sides tilts higher.
But isn't the National Weather Service event the bigger part of this story? The fact that the president said something that wasn't right, and the scientists and the government are being compelled to, one, not contradict the president, and then two, put out a statement that seems to contradict other scientists and the government.
And also, the president's own defense also raises an interesting point. The president's defense is, I heard at one point that Alabama was at risk. By the time I made my statement, Alabama was no longer at risk, and I insisted it was. The question is, well, what were you doing in that interval? And the answer was, I was taking no briefings because I was golfing. And I think that these stories, even the small ones, they reveal something about a unique process of government in which the president does not take his responsibility seriously. It's not just a matter of lying. It's a matter of not doing the work, and that's what necessitates the lie.
Laura, there were a number of stories regarding controversies surrounding Trump properties, from the vice president staying at one in Ireland to what we are now looking at with an investigation in Congress into properties in Scotland. Tell us what we need to know.
Right. So the House Judiciary and House Democrats as a whole are expanding their scope, and they want to define very clearly what their impeachment inquiry would look like. And so on top of potential obstruction of justice issues that came out from the Mueller report, they are adding to that by wanting to look into whether or not the president has violated the emoluments clause, whether or not he is profiting off of the presidency with stays like Pence's in Doonbeg in Ireland, as well as the president's suggestion that the G7 stay in Doral at the Doral Resort in Florida next year. And so Democrats want to add those to their impeachment inquiry. And we could see a vote as early as next week on adding this extended scope.
We will watch for that this week.
Are the Trump hotels a presidential tip jar? That's what we need to know.
We'll leave it there. Thank you. We'll be back in a moment.